Hello, welcome to a new commentary video. Just before getting into the E75 Berserker, which is the topic of this video, I'll quickly show you how to download Tank Blitz, which is the Lesta version of this game, from the internet, so you guys can play it. So it's quite easy for computer. You just download the Lesta Game Center, and you can do this just by searching Lesta Game Center in English into the search bar, and if you click it, that will take you to the Lesta game page, and you just click download. And then after you download it, you just go to the Game Center and you select the game, which is Tank Blitz, and you just download it onto your PC like that. And it works the same as the Wargaming Game Center. You just find your account, download the game, and then play it. So for mobile devices, I don't have an Apple device, so I can't advise you on how to get the game on Apple, but you can just search in the search bar Tank Blitz Skachat, which is download in Russian, and then you can scroll down and find some of these websites with the APK, which will let you download onto Android. Obviously on Android, when you're searching, the results will be better than on a PC, because this is giving computer related results, but on Android it would actually have more APK results. So into the topic of today's video, which is the E75 Berserker. This is a tier 9 heavy tank based on the stats of the E75, and it was the third clan reward tank for the Lesta server, while the Wargaming side got the Avenir, the Lesta side got the E75 Berserker. Speaking of the Avenir, currently there is an event for it on the Lesta server. It's called the Batchat Roland, and if I can get this tank, I'll definitely do a review of it, because it's a much better tank on this server than it is on the Wargaming side. So back to the E75 Berserker. What are the differences between this and the E75? I'll list them out, as I have now published a review on this tank and I've got all the differences down here. Just before talking about the differences, I'll say the Lesta server did not get the update 10.6 tier 9 rebalance that Wargaming got, so the E75 didn't get buffed, and it has its quote-unquote old stats. So compared to the Lesta E75, the E75 Berserker has 100 less hit points, it has worse aim time slightly, it has worse dispersion by a noticeable amount, and a much better reload time of 10.95. That in itself is very good, since it means a DPM upgrade, but it also has increased alpha damage of 20 on AP and APCR and 30 on HE. This gives it a massive DPM boost from the 2260 that the tech tree version has up to 2631. That means it's among the higher DPM heavy tanks of tier 9 and the highest for its level of alpha damage. The next closest thing would be the IS-8, which has around 2800 DPM with 420 alpha damage. Other differences between the E75 and the Berserker are its terrain resistances. So the E75 is slightly worse on hard terrain with 1.1, the Berserker has 1. On medium terrain, the E75 is better with 1.2, whereas the Berserker has 1.3, and on hard terrain the E75 is also better with 1.7 and the Berserker having 1.8. So for terrain resistances, the important thing to see here is the less difference between medium and hard terrain that there is, the better, because it means you will lose less mobility by going off-road. And note that off-road is what takes up roughly 80% of all maps in the game, so medium terrain mobility is the important stat here. While the Berserker has better hard terrain stats, it means it'll be faster and more mobile only on roads, concrete areas and paved areas, which take up only roughly 15 to 20% of all the maps in the game. It means it's important for the tank to stay on roads and similar terrain types, and it means that it is noticeable when you go off of roads. Other differences are that the E75 weighs just slightly heavier than the Berserker, and it has 20 less base horsepower at 900 compared to 920. When equipped, the horsepower is also just slightly worse, at 1053 compared to 1076. The raw acceleration rate of the E75 is 11.5 compared to 11.8. That isn't such a big difference, but then you have to think about the terrain resistance differences. So on hard terrain, the E75 accelerates 1.3 horsepower per ton slower than the Berserker, and that's just due to that 1.1 compared to the 1 on the E75 Berserker. And on medium terrain, the E75 in the tech tree is faster at accelerating, since the Berserker has that 1.3 terrain resistance difference. So basically, in summary, the biggest differences are 100 hit points less on the Berserker, worse accuracy and aim time on the Berserker, better hard terrain mobility, but worse medium terrain mobility, and much better reload time and alpha damage and DPM on the E75 Berserker. Just before going back, I will show, since there is a review on my website now, you can just go to guysblitz.com and then find reviews, go down to the bottom where it says Lesta Tank Reviews, click on it, and it will bring you to this page, and there you can select the E75 Berserker and check out all of its stats, which I have listed, and its armor profile. So now I'll show its stats in-game to give you an idea of what it's like. The whole overview as to just compared to the E75. So its weight, as said before, well, hold on, I'll start from the beginning. 2,100 hit points. That's not bad for a tier 9 heavy, but it is below average for a super heavy tank, which this is. Its armor I'll show in a minute, but it's identical to the tech tree E75, so there's no difference at all. 282 meters view range is quite good for a heavy tank. Camo rating seems terrible, but that's because I don't have a crew skill leveled up. The DPM is very good, 2631, especially considering it has 480 alpha damage on armor piercing. 10.95 seconds reload is not fast, but it's also not that slow. Compared to tanks like the E75, which has a 12.2 second reload, or the VK4502B and Moisian, WZ114, 50 TP Tishkevich, tanks like those with 128, 130mm guns, this out-reloads them by roughly 1 second or more. 250 armor piercing penetration, that's pretty average. 311 on APCR is also pretty average, but it's quite nice because its APCR penetration has a bit more normalization and shell velocity. 65mm of high explosive penetration is just average, but it's quite nice, especially with this tank doing 630 damage on its high explosive shells. Its aim time is 4.6 seconds. As said in the comparison with the E75, that's quite poor, and in fact it's the worst in tier 9 after the Object 752. Without the vertical stabilizer on, it's 5 seconds aim time, so vertical stabilizer makes quite a big difference, and it is the better choice as this is a brawling frontline heavy tank where you're not going to be stopping to aim for ages. 0.371 dispersion, for 480 alpha that's not bad at all, but it's also among the worst in tier 8. Other tanks, as said, like the WZ114, the E75 itself, the VK4502B, Moisian, 50 TP Tishkevich, 50 TP Prototype, they all have 0.344 or 0.362 dispersion, so this makes it by far the least accurate out of all of those tanks. 7 degrees of gun depression is pretty good, it's the same as the E75, and especially with the armor profile that this has, it makes it quite usable and comfortable. 40 kilometers top speed is very good for the armor profile that this has. As a super heavy, generally you don't get a high top speed like this, so it is very nice. 15 kilometers in reverse is just average for a German super heavy, but it is a very nice trait of these German tanks that it can reverse at quite a good speed. 11.8 horsepower per ton is quite average. It's not bad for certain due to its good armor profile, and it can get up to its 40 kilometers top speed on hard terrain with that acceleration, but it does take a while. On medium terrain, as said before, that goes down by quite a bit to 9.1 horsepower per ton, which is quite slow, so you need to take note to stay on hard terrain. The weight is 91.45 tons, so it's very nice for ramming when you can get up to that top speed, and especially in game modes it can do quite a lot of damage by rams. 34 degrees of traverse speed is just average for a heavy tank. It goes down to 26.4 on medium terrain, which is again still quite average, but it is a significant decrease in mobility, so you want to stay on hard terrain as much as possible. So now going into the armor. This is against an IS-4, so its premium penetration is quite high for a tier 9 tank, looking at a tier 9 tank, but the armor piercing penetration of 252mm, as shown here, is quite normal for a tier 9 heavy tank. So this is the kind of view you would get if you were an enemy tier 9 heavy tank, or maybe a tier 10 heavy or medium tank, and you were looking at the E75 Berserker or just an E75's armor profile. So you can see the upper plate is extremely strong. That's the typical case with German super heavy tanks. The turret is also very strong, and the cupola weak point is very narrow and small and hard to hit. The lower plate is large and it seems quite weak until you realize it's very strong when you angle it, and that is definitely the case. You have to do angling with these German heavy tanks to make the armor profile really good. You can see the lower plate here is slightly red, and it will bounce reliably this level of penetration, and shooting the tracks won't do anything as the tracks are 40mm thick. Notice the turret face, it's just like a Tiger II, it's small but it's quite flat, and you'll see the issue with that when you switch to premium ammo. So here, looking at premium ammo, this is 330mm of heat pen. That is above average penetration for a tier 9 heavy tank, so most tier 9 heavies and especially mediums won't see armor profile like this when they use premium ammo, especially on that roof. Currently the roof here is penetrable because it's an auto ricochet to AP and APCR ammo types, but for heat it can penetrate easily as it just ignores that ricochet angle. 330 will penetrate that, but as you can see on this side, if you angle a bit, it suddenly becomes red, and of course lower penetration like 320, 310mm won't go through that. And you have to note that most heavy tanks in tier 9 do have between 310 and 320mm of premium penetration, especially on heat ammo. So you can see the upper plate is still extremely strong, and that won't be penetrable except by tanks which are face hugging you using premium ammo, and you'll see that in some replays later, or tanks which are tier 10 tank destroyers using premium ammo such as a Ho-Ri or an Object 268. So you'll see its side armor is very strong even against the 330mm of heat penetration, and that just shows you how good it can be at side scraping. Notice the turret face, it's penetrable, but it's quite small, meaning at range it can be quite a hard or troll target to hit, though it is quite weak to premium ammo due to its flat armor angling. I'll go down and show the gun depression view. This is with its -7 degrees of gun depression. You can see that the cupola has almost certainly disappeared here, and it's very hard to hit in this situation. The turret face has also become smaller, and the roof is no longer a weak point even against this 330mm of heat penetration. The gun mantlet taking up most of the turret face means it can be quite hard to hit, and you can see the dispersion of this tank. It's not terrible, the IS-4, the dispersion, it's 0.326, but you can see that it's already larger than the size of the turret face on the E75, so there's a chance that even if you aim perfectly, it'll hit the turret cheeks or the roof or the upper plate. So now I'll show you, well, the camouflage of this tank. As it has a unique camouflage, it was a clan reward vehicle. I'll just go around and show you all the details on the vehicle. These spaced side skirts don't actually act as spaced armor, just like on the E75, they're just there for decoration. So now, showing you the tank, I'll go into some replays. So this is Dynasty's Pearl. Note that since it is a city map, most of this is hard terrain, giving the tank good mobility. Currently I'm on medium terrain. You'll notice that the acceleration is quite slow, traverse is quite slow, but as soon as I get onto this road, suddenly I'm much more mobile, and I can get into position quite quickly due to that. So here I use high explosive, that good 630 alpha damage, doing 647 into the Scorpion G. And notice the reload time compared to usual tier 9 heavy tanks with this alpha damage. It definitely has quite a fast reload, and with adrenaline on it's only 9.1 seconds. You can see the good alpha damage of 480 rolling for 506 there. That's something that happens much more commonly on this tank compared to the usual 640 alpha on other heavy tanks. The premium damage on this tank is 410, so that 310 there was a very, very low roll. It means I can't kill this Jagdtiger in one shot. In this replay, I make a bit of a mistake by using the engine power boost. It means I get ammo racks by the RHM. That will happen in a bit. That's a typical German heavy tank problem with the ammunition in the sides under the turret. If they get hit there, it can get damaged, and I made a mistake by using the engine boost in this game. And now I've got an 18-second reload. But you'll see that good high explosive again there. The RHM not using a small liner, so I do 637 damage to them. Notice how few shots I have done in this game, but the good alpha damage combined with using HE has allowed me to do 3,500 damage in just the 2 minutes and 30 seconds of battle duration that this was. That was a fairly average, unimpressive game for this tank. Nothing too special. If you guys do want to see some really high damage battles in this tank, or some battles out of the noob matchmaker, then there is another video on this tank on my channel. And note that this is in the noob matchmaker because I had to start a new account to play on Lesta. I couldn't transfer my information from EU as I didn't think of that. So into the next game, which is on Faust. Currently this map isn't in rotation on the Wargaming server, but Lesta doesn't have seasons, so all maps are always in rotation. This game perfectly shows what this tank can do. It shows the mobility, it shows the DPM, it shows the brawling aspect. And you'll get to see an E75 in a minute, so you can see what this tank's armor profile is like. So here you can see I'm going at 40 kilometers per hour. That's the good top speed of the E75 coming into play, and because it's downhill I can easily reach that top speed. But now on this medium terrain you can see the tank has slowed down significantly, and that's due to that 1.3 medium terrain resistance. So now seeing my allies pushing forward, I'm also going to push. Moving slowly, you can see that dispersion and aim time there. I'm trying not to let it bloom out too much, then rush the shot so it hits the Moisian's upper plate. But now I'm going to take the fight to this E75, and you'll be able to see what this tank's armor profile is like facing its own level of penetration. So you can see that right there I just angled in slightly so that E75 caught my track and didn't penetrate the armor. That's one of the really nice things about the 125mm of side armor this tank has. So here you can see I'm face hugging the E75. He uses armor piercing against me so he won't be able to penetrate, but I have to switch to APCR to deal with his armor profile. which again is identical to the E75 Berserker. And you can see there the flat turret front of the tank means that it is weak to premium ammo, especially in close quarters. Now I'm going to take a bit of a strange angle to try and get at this Waffenträger. And as this is just a platform, the enemy doesn't really have anywhere to hide, so I sit here and wait for the next shot on them. And you can see that fast reload of the tank is really useful for situations like this. The Waffenträger with its big gun has roughly a 12-second reload, and this with 10.9 means I can confidently out-reload him. So here again you can see that good DPM coming into use. Even though I'm still low rolling, putting out good damage. And now begins a chase with this Waffenträger. At this point you'll see I've accelerated to a good speed, but now going up this hill, which is on medium terrain, I really slow down. Again, that's that 1.3 medium terrain resistance. I'm only going at 9 kilometers, 8 kilometers per hour up the slope here, which makes it quite hard to catch this Waffenträger which is running away. But now along the flat ground, gradually accelerating, and it's important to note that the Waffenträger has the same top speed as this tank, so despite having good acceleration, they can't actually get away from this tank that easily. Now I'm going at 38 kilometers per hour. Again, when going on that missile launch pad area, it was hard terrain, so this tank was able to accelerate quite easily to its top speed. And here I'm just derping shots on the move, trying to get the damage. I should really be aiming, but as I'm alone on this side of the map, chasing the Waffenträger, I just go for it. And again, you can see I angled the tracks just slightly, so the enemy wasn't able to penetrate the lower plate and got baited into shooting the tracks. So that replay showed the good DPM of the tank, it showed the good sides of the mobility, it showed the bad sides of the mobility, and you were able to see the E75's armor profile in action. It just shows that this tank is overall very strong in tier 9. That's what happens when you take one of the most consistent heavy tanks, the E75, from the tech tree, give it some better DPM, better alpha damage, and slightly better mobility on hard terrain, and keep its armor profile the same. You get this very strong, proficient, brawling heavy tank, which is the E75 Berserker. Again, this was a clan reward tank, so it was very easy to get. I had about 200 battles when I got this tank, and it makes decent credits, and it's overall just a very nice tank. If you do play Lesta server and there is a chance to get it, definitely go for it. It's a very good tank in tier 9, very enjoyable to play. Thanks for watching the video. Hopefully I'll bring more Lesta content like this in the future. It's interesting for me, as Lesta's a world where there can be wonderful tanks and different stats compared to wargaming. And hopefully I'll also do some videos like this for wargaming as well, if there is something interesting to talk about. Thanks for watching, see you next time.